Outside the frosted kitchen windows of my log home, a fierce winter storm whipped heavy wet snow against the glass. Inside, the warm scent of maple syrup and fresh coffee filled the room. All four of us were gathered around the wooden dining table. Me, my 10-year-old son Owen, my neighbor Amelia Grant, and her 7-year-old daughter, Sophie. Amelia wore the oversized gray fleece sweater I had handed her the night before. I stood by the stove, flipping pancakes on a heavy cast iron griddle. It felt safe. It felt dangerously like a family, a quiet illusion we had carefully maintained for 3 days. Suddenly, little Sophie set her crayon down, looked straight at me, and asked in a clear voice, "Mr. Nathan?" "Yes, Soph," I asked, flipping a golden pancake. "Will you marry my mom?" I froze instantly, the spatula locking mid-air over the hot stove. Amelia went rigid, her coffee mug stopping 2 inches from her lips. Across the table, Owen nearly knocked his glass of orange juice off the mat. Before either adult could breathe, Sophie added with flawless child logic, "Because she smiles way more when she's here." Amelia's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. "Sophie." Owen leaned across his plate, giving a decisive nod. "She really does, Dad." I slowly turned to look at Amelia. The 35-year-old billionaire founder of a global design empire was completely speechless, unable to answer a 7-year-old child. "My name is Nathan Cole. I am a widowed single father, and for 2 years, I pretended the woman next door was just a neighbor." Then her daughter asked a 9-word question that demolished our comfortable lies. 2 years before the storm trapped us together, Amelia and Sophie moved into the sprawling timber frame estate right next to mine. I assumed she was just another wealthy executive buying a vacation retreat. But on her very first morning, Amelia marched across the rain-soaked grass to my workshop steps. Her hair was tied back in a messy knot. She wore an oversized flannel shirt and held a heavy screwdriver in her hand. No bodyguards, no private assistants, and no luxury cars in sight. She looked through the workshop door and asked, "Do you know why my upper kitchen cabinet door just fell off its hinges?" I wiped my sawdust-covered hands on my apron. "Gravity." Amelia arched one dark eyebrow. "Are you always this helpful, Mr. Cole?" "Only before my first cup of coffee, Ms. Grant," I grunted, reaching for my tool pouch. That was the first time I saw her smile. A radiant grin that took the wind right out of my lungs. Over the next 2 years, an unwritten rhythm developed between our households. Owen helped Sophie adjust to her new school, and Sophie became the first child who could make my quiet, guarded son talk about his late mother without breaking down in tears. My wife passed away 6 years ago. 2 years later, I tried dating once. The woman was lovely, but she eventually admitted she wasn't ready for a child to come first in every decision. When we split up, 6-year-old Owen looked up at me with quiet heartbreak. "Is she gone too, Dad?" Hearing his quiet confusion shattered me. That day, I established one strict rule. I can handle my own broken heart, but I will never let my son learn how to lose another person just because I get lonely. Amelia had her own scars. Her marriage had ended mutually 4 years prior as her design firm grew into an industry powerhouse. Before signing the divorce papers, her ex sighed quietly, "You can handle everything yourself, Amelia. I don't think you actually need me." Amelia hated the word need. She didn't want a partner who stayed out of obligation. But deep down, she harbored a quiet fear that men only fell in love with her success, or would demand she shrink her life to fit their comfort zone. Her core rule was simple. I will never beg a man to choose me. If he wants to be in my life, he has to be brave enough to step forward on his own. So we stayed trapped in our comfortable stalemate, until an early winter blizzard slammed into the valley, trapping us inside the exact same house. The winter storm hit Cedar Hollow 36 hours earlier than predicted. By 8 o'clock on Friday evening, violent wind gusts tore through the pine trees. Across the lawn, Amelia's estate went dark as a massive pine branch crashed onto her power line, disabling her auxiliary heating system's internal breaker. I pulled on my heavy canvas coat, grabbed a flashlight, and marched through the snow to her front door. When Amelia opened it, she was wrapped in a blanket, her breath misting white in the freezing foyer air. The generator failed, she murmured, her teeth chattering. The county roads are completely blocked by fallen trees. Pack a bag for you and Sophie, I said without hesitation. You're staying at my place. Amelia stiffened, her old independence flaring up. I can order an emergency heating crew. Amelia, I can handle it. I know you can, I interrupted, looking her straight in the eye. You can handle everything, Amelia. But you don't have to freeze in the dark just to prove it to me. She went quiet. Her defensive posture softened, and she let out a resigned sigh. 10 minutes. My log home was smaller, but it was warm, insulated, and heated by a heavy cast iron wood stove. Sophie deemed the situation an indoor camping adventure, dragging her sleeping bag into Owen's room. Amelia took the pull-out sofa in my office, while I kept my bedroom down the hall. By midnight, 3 feet of snow blocked the driveway. Radio reports confirmed emergency road crews would take at least 3 to 4 days to clear the ridge. We were trapped. At 11:30 p.m., after the kids fell asleep, I walked into the dark kitchen to fetch water. Amelia sat on the window bench near the wood stove, wrapped in my gray sweater, staring out at the white storm. I poured 2 cups of hot chamomile tea and walked over, handing one to her. Thank you, she whispered softly, her fingers brushing mine as she took the ceramic mug, for not making a big deal out of this. It's a wood stove and tea, Amelia, I grunted gently. Not a heroic rescue. Amelia let out a genuine laugh, looking up through the amber firelight glow. I'm not used to being taken care of, Nathan. I know, I murmured. That's why I'm keeping it simple. The air between us suddenly felt charged, heavy with 2 years of unspoken words, shared Saturday mornings, and suppressed longing. I swallowed hard, stepping back before my self-control completely shattered. Get some sleep, Amelia. The storm isn't going anywhere tomorrow. Good night, Nathan, she whispered into the dark. By the second morning, domestic rhythm inside my small log home had dissolved into a delightful, terrifying kind of chaos. At 7:30 a.m., I walked into the kitchen to find the billionaire CEO of Grant Design International staring down at a pitch-black, scorched disk of dough in my skillet. I crossed my arms in the doorway. I see you've successfully invented a brand new composite building material, Ms. Grant. Amelia spun around, holding a wooden spatula like a weapon. The heat distribution on your antique stove is unregulated coal. The stove is fine, I grunted, stepping beside her and gently taking the spatula. You had the burner turned up to high. Pancakes require patience, CEO. I run a multi-million-dollar corporation, Nathan, she replied smoothly, resting her hip against the counter. I don't do slow cooking. Clearly, I smirked, scraping the blackened disc into the scrap bin. Step aside before you set off my battery-powered smoke alarm. Amelia tossed her linen kitchen towel straight at my shoulder. I could buy your entire kitchen, you know? And yet, I murmured, leaning down slightly to meet her hazel eyes. You still can't make a basic pancake. 10-year-old Owen chuckled from the dining table. Is she really a billionaire, Dad? I choked on my coffee, coughing into my hand. Owen, that is impolite. Amelia turned to my son, her hazel eyes sparkling. On paper, Owen, yes. But in this kitchen, I am completely unqualified. Over the next 48 hours, the invisible walls between our 2 worlds began to crumble. We sat together at the wooden dining table during afternoons. Amelia worked on her laptop, reviewing architectural drafts, while I sketched custom joinery designs. The kids played board games on the rug near the stove. Are you going to stare at my screen all day, Nathan? Amelia asked softly without looking up. I'm looking out the window behind you, I lied smoothly. The window is 3 feet to my left. I have terrible spatial awareness for a carpenter, I grunted, adjusting my pencil. Amelia turned her head, looking over the rim of her reading glasses. You're tapping your thumb against your mug. You only do that when you're trying to figure out what a person is thinking. I froze. My thumb stopped on the handle. You're keeping tabs on my physical habits, Grant? I am a designer, Cole, she whispered, her tone dropping all sarcastic edge. I noticed structural details. Later that evening, while Amelia took an executive conference call, Sophie joined me in the basement workshop section. She sat on an overturned crate, watching me sand a small oak jewelry box. Mr. Nathan? Sophie asked, swinging her legs. Do you have a girlfriend? No, Soph. I don't. Why not? Because, well, being a dad takes up a lot of time. I gave the simplified version. Sophie leaned forward, her big hazel eyes, so remarkably like her mother's, staring into mine. Mom doesn't have a boyfriend either. Owen said you like my mom. My heart slammed against my ribs. Owen talks way too much. Sophie giggled. It's okay. I think you should like her. She doesn't laugh like that when we're in the city. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Amelia and I sat by the dying embers of the wood stove. You're very quiet tonight, Nathan, Amelia murmured. Just thinking, I said softly, about how dangerous it is. Getting used to this. Amelia looked at me under the firelight. Did it ever occur to you, Nathan, that maybe some things are worth getting used to? Before I could answer, the floorboards creaked upstairs, signaling the start of the next morning, which brought us right back to the breakfast table and Sophie's terrifying question, will you marry my mom? After the kids ran off to build a blanket fort, a heavy silence settled over the kitchen. Amelia cleared her throat, her face flushed. Nathan, I am so sorry. She doesn't understand adult boundaries. Are you apologizing because she asked? I said softly, setting my dish towel on the counter. Or because of the answer you thought I'd give? Amelia stopped mid-sentence, her breath catching. Nathan, what are you saying? I'm saying, I whispered, stepping closer to her, that your daughter just said out loud the exact thing I've been terrified to admit for 2 whole years. Before Amelia could process my words, the sudden chime of her cell phone echoed across the counter. The storm had passed, cellular service was restored, and the outside world came crashing straight back into our sanctuary. Amelia picked up her phone, seeing a high-priority video notification from her executive board. She stepped into the study to take the call, leaving the door slightly ajar. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but as I walked past carrying firewood, her tight, stressed voice carried clearly through the gap. I understand the board's position, Richard, she was saying. Brighton Bay is a major expansion, but asking me to relocate on site for 10 months is a massive operational shift. My chest tightened into a hard, cold knot. Brighton Bay. It was a coastal city over 1,500 kilometers away. I had no idea she was being asked to personally move there to oversee construction. When she ended the call and stepped into the hallway, she froze, seeing me standing near the stove with an armful of birch logs. You're moving. My voice sounded rough. Amelia lowered her phone, her expression shifting into a guarded posture. The board offered me the direct executive chair for Brighton Bay. It requires an on-site presence for 10 months. I have 36 hours to give my final decision. My old defensive instincts flared up, erecting a wall around my heart. Congratulations, Amelia. That's a massive career milestone. You should definitely take it. Amelia's face went cold. She took 3 fast strides toward me, stepping right into my personal space. Don't you dare do that, Nathan Cole. Do what? I asked, setting the logs down with a thud. Don't put on your polite neighbor voice and pretend this is just corporate logistics, she snapped, her voice trembling. You didn't even ask me what I wanted. It's your company. You built it. And is that all you see when you look at me? She cried out softly, tears glistening in her eyes. This morning, when Sophie asked you that question, you didn't look at me like a CEO, Nathan. You looked at me like a man who was terrified because someone just read his mind. I stood frozen. I didn't buy the property next to yours by accident 2 years ago, she sobbed quietly. I could have built a mansion anywhere. I stayed here because every Saturday morning, you treated me like a human being instead of a balance sheet. I've been in love with you for nearly a year, Nathan. And you just sat there and decided my entire future for me without asking a single question. Her raw words hit me like a physical blow. She was right. I had decided inside my own cautious head that she would inevitably leave, completely stripping her of the choice to love us back. I am terrified, Amelia, I confessed, my voice breaking as I took a step toward her. My son lost his mother once, and then watched another woman walk away. I swore I would never put him through that pain again. That is a fair fear, Nathan, Amelia whispered, taking both of my calloused hands. But you cannot use your fear as armor to keep everyone out. You have to give someone the chance to choose you. Tears stung my own eyes. I loved you from the afternoon you fell asleep on my sofa with Sophie on your shoulder, I confessed softly. Amelia let out a tearful laugh. That was 8 months ago. 8 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, I corrected. I didn't wait another second. I pulled her close and whispered, Can I kiss you, Amelia? You took long enough to ask, Cole, she whispered. I leaned down and kissed her. A deep, tender kiss that wiped away 2 years of neighborly boundaries and fear. When we pulled back, her phone buzzed with a calendar countdown. Brighton Bay contract decision, 35 hours remaining. Section 636 hours and mature choice. Target, 710 words. The next morning, over 2 cups of black coffee at the counter, my knee-jerk habit flared up again. If Brighton Bay is what you've worked for your whole life, Amelia, you have to go, I said softly. I can't keep you tethered to a small lake town. Amelia set her coffee mug down with a sharp clack. If you try to play the noble martyr one more time, Nathan, I swear I will throw this hot coffee straight at your head. I blinked, caught off guard. I'm trying to be unselfish. You're deciding for me again, she snapped, leaning across the counter. I am 35 years old. I am not asking for your permission to have a career, and I am not asking you to move 1,500 kilometers away. I am asking if you are brave enough to build a real plan with me. Her words knocked the wind right out of my sails. She was completely right. I was using nobility as an excuse to avoid the hard work of building a complex, adult relationship. So how do we do this? I asked, looking her in the eye. No drama, no noble sacrifices. Just real life. We pulled out a legal pad to map out 3 realistic scenarios. Option 1. Amelia moves to Brighton Bay full-time for 10 months. Result. The distance would strain a new relationship, and I couldn't pull Owen out of his school. Unacceptable. Option 2. Amelia flatly declines the board offer. Result. She sacrifices a massive career milestone and might eventually resent me or our relationship for it. Unacceptable. Option 3. The hybrid executive strategy. Amelia realized she was operating under the corporate assumption that a CEO had to physically sit on site 5 days a week. Why am I trying to run a 21st century firm like it's 1985? She murmured, her eyes lighting up with clarity. She decided to counteroffer. She would oversee the launch on a compressed hybrid schedule, spending 2 weeks on site for setup, followed by a rotating schedule of 3 days in Brighton Bay and 4 days working remotely from her Cedar Hollow office each week. She would also promote Marcus, her senior operations lead, delegating daily site management. Meanwhile, I made my own commitments. I agreed to hire 2 junior apprentices for my woodworking shop, delegating basic tasks so I could take remote work days and travel with the kids to visit her during school holidays. We established our core relationship rules. 1. No saying I'm fine when something is actually wrong. 2. No canceling a weekend date without immediately booking the makeup visit. 3. Every Sunday evening is an uncancelable family dinner with Owen and Sophie. 4. After 3 months, we'll evaluate the arrangement together, no endless limbo. Later that afternoon, while Amelia negotiated her proposal, I took Owen for a walk along the snow-covered lake shore. Owen, I began gently, kneeling beside him. You know how Amelia and Sophie stayed with us during the storm? Yeah, Owen nodded. Are you guys going to be a real couple now? I chuckled nervously. We're trying to figure that out. I wanted to make sure you were okay with her and Sophie being around a lot more. Owen looked at me with wisdom far beyond his 10 years. Dad, does she make you happy? Yes, I said honestly. She really does. And she doesn't mind when you get sawdust on the furniture, Owen added, nodding decisively. I think you should keep her. I burst out laughing, pulling my son into a tight hug. Thanks for the vote of confidence, kiddo. At 5:22 p.m. on Monday afternoon, 38 minutes before her deadline, Amelia walked into my workshop. Her phone rested in her pocket, displaying an approved counter-proposal email from her board. They accepted the hybrid model, she smiled brightly. Amelia looked at me, a playful smirk returning. So, Mr. Cole, now that corporate logistics are settled, are you actually going to take me on a proper date? Ms. Grant, I said, wrapping my arms around her waist. I am going to take you out every single Friday night for the rest of my life. 15 months later, the morning sun shone brightly over Cedar Hollow, reflecting off the calm lake waters. The hybrid arrangement hadn't been an effortless fairy tale. We dealt with delayed flights, exhausting travel days, and minor miscommunications. There was one painful Friday in month 3 when Amelia missed Owen's Little League Championship game due to an emergency site delay in Brighton Bay. Owen was crushed, but instead of buying an expensive gift to bribe her way out of it, Amelia flew back on a midnight flight, showed up at 6 in the morning, sat on Owen's bed and looked him straight in the eye. I made a promise to you, Owen, and I failed to keep it. I am so sorry, and I will do better next time. That was the moment I knew Amelia was truly staying. She didn't just love me. She loved my son enough to be accountable to him. Amelia successfully launched the Brighton Bay project and transitioned her primary executive operations back to her Cedar Hollow home office full-time. On a warm Sunday morning, all 4 of us gathered around my kitchen table once again. I was flipping golden pancakes on the griddle, while Amelia carefully sliced fresh strawberries. Sophie, now 8 years old, looked over at me with a mischievous spark in her hazel eyes. Mr. Nathan? She asked casually. I went on high alert, locking my spatula over the griddle. Sophie, don't you start. Owen burst out laughing, while Amelia shook her head with a chuckle. I set the spatula down, walked over to Amelia, and pulled a small velvet box from my apron pocket. Amelia froze, her breath catching in her throat for the second time in that kitchen. I looked down at Sophie and smiled softly. 1 year ago, Soph, you asked me a question that I was too scared to answer. Then I turned to Amelia, kneeling down on one knee right beside the breakfast table. Amelia Grant, I whispered, opening the box to reveal a simple, stunning diamond ring. Will you marry me? Amelia's eyes filled with tears of pure joy. Yes, Nathan. Absolutely yes. Sophie threw her hands in the air. I told you guys. She literally did, Owen agreed, giving his new sister a high five. We had become a family long before there was ever a ring on her finger. Marriage didn't create our family. It was just our way of officially choosing the love we built every single day. Do you think children can sometimes see the love between 2 people much clearer than the adults involved? If a child asked you a question as honest and direct as Sophie's, would you laugh it off out of fear? Or would you be brave enough to admit what your heart really wants? We would love to hear your thoughts and personal stories in the comments below. If this story reminded you that true love, family devotion, and quiet courage will always conquer fear, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone special. I have reduced the total word count by approximately 500 words while maintaining proportional balance across all 8 sections, smooth text to speech punctuation, and all key character beats. Let me know if you need any further adjustments.